Hello, everyone. This is Sarashmika Jami, and this is my Deliverable 3 presentation. As you know, I did my project on Twitter sentiment analysis and specifically regarding climate change. So, a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about in my presentation. I'll quickly go over my data set, any changes made to my objectives and goals, how I constructed my models, the results of this deliverable, and my plan for deliverable 4. So, my data set. Once I cleaned my data set, I began the process of creating my classifier. Natural language processing is a common way to analyze the sentiment of any text. Therefore, I thought it would be a great use for this project. I used NLTK, which is a package offered by Python, and I used that to remove any stop words from my data set from the tweets. Stop words are basically words that are not needed in determining the sentiment of the tweet, so in determining whether the tweet is positive or negative. Once I did that, I used a package called TextBlob to assign them polarity values. This package is used to calculate the sentiment of the text, and so I used it to calculate the sentiment of my tweets. The package assigned a numerical value to the tweets. This is called the polarity value. If the polarity value is positive, it's a positive tweet, and if it's negative, it's a negative tweet. So if a tweet was assigned a positive value, I labeled that as a positive tweet, and I created a new column and gave it a positive label. I iterated through my entire data set and assigned them values accordingly. Once I did that, I started my model construction. So there were a couple of changes to my goals. The more I worked with the data and my code, the more I had to rethink my objectives and goals for my capstone project. My original plan was to analyze tweets relating to climate change dating back 5 years. But once I started working with my code more, I realized how much data that entails. I don't have the time nor the equipment to analyze all that data on a huge level. So I decided to create a data set going back only 1 month, and I limit myself to tweets relating to climate change only. Before, I wanted to do climate change, greenhouse gases, global warming, and whatnot. So I had to be more specific in what I include, and I also decided to remove the use of emojis and retweets because I felt like that was extremely redundant and not really needed for my sentiment analysis. I also another change that I made was that I used a new method called bag of words. The more I researched this method, the more useful it seemed to me. So this was extremely different from my original plan. My original plan was to start off with the naive Bayes classifier as well, but I decided to start off more simpler with a logistic regression model, and then I'll work my way to my naive Bayes classifier. I also decided to use NLP early on, and I'll speak more on that on my next slide. So my model construction. The majority of this deliverable was spent on constructing my models. I used a different approach than expected. I started off by creating a matrix to store my tweets, and I used a method called bag of words. Bag of words is a natural language processing method that converts text into a numerical representation and can be created using the count factorization function. Count factorization generates a matrix representing all the words in the document, and in this case, we're using this function to create a matrix to represent these tweets. Once I created that matrix, I needed to create my algorithm. Using a logistic regression model, I created my prediction model. I created training and test sets from the data set from before, and split them randomly in the middle. One of the biggest hurdles that I've faced so far is the lack of data sets. I had to create my own data set, and I had to create my test set and training set. So that was definitely a challenge, but I feel like I tackled it really well, and I now am moving on to um, the testing of my model. So as you can see, this is a snippet of my code. You can see the rest of my code on my GitHub account. I created a vectorizer, account vectorizer, and used my data frame called polarity of tweets. It's a data frame with my data set, and it has two columns, the tweet and the polarity, positive or negative. And then I split them into training and test sets, split them evenly into training and test sets, and I created my logistic regression model. I'm in the process of testing my logistic regression model and in the process of testing my naive Bayes model. And once I determine which one is more accurate, I will create my official model on that and then proceed on to deliverable 4. So the results of this deliverable is that my predictive model has been fitted, or at least one of them has. What I want to do for my next deliverable is to finish this and then finish my naive Bayes model and see which one is more accurate and whatnot. I'll also use a different method called TEF-IDF. It's another method to create a matrix with weights. It's different than the bag of words method, where it creates a numerical values that measures the relevancy of the word by multiplying two different metrics, how many times a word appears in the document, and then the frequency of the word across the documents. So it's a little different than bag of words, and I'm curious to see how that will affect the accuracy. Once I created that model, I'll create my naive Bayes classification and see which one fares better. I'll be using some of the built-in models from the scikit-learn machine learning functions that will give me the accuracy rating for the models and see which one is higher. That is my goal for my next deliverable. So I've been doing some research into my machine learning pipeline techniques, the scikit-learn machine learning pipeline techniques, to help I construct my naive Bayes classifier, which is my next plan for deliverable 4. I hope to validate my models and determine which one is more successful, as I said so. And then I hope to also, once I finish the model, I can feed tweets real time and determine the sentiment of those tweets real time. Obviously, sentiment of the tweets of like climate change, but I hope to determine the sentiment on real-time tweets, which should be very interesting. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, and thank you.